Hi everyone, welcome back. So in today's video, I'd like to talk about project management and project lifecycle because as a business analyst, you oftentimes have to work very closely with the project management team and project manager as well. As an internal business analyst, I get pulled into multiple different types of projects throughout the year. So some of the examples are things like mergers and acquisition. So in short term, what we call as M&A, new system implementation, and smaller system changes such as annual release upgrades and/or annual system maintenance for defects. For bigger capital projects, there's often project managers who oversee end-to-end process to make sure that there is a deliverable and who keeps track of the project scope. But oftentimes there's no designated project manager for smaller size projects. So this is why it's essential for you to have an understanding of project management and project lifecycle, because oftentimes if there is no project manager, you might have to step up and try to understand what exactly is a deliverable and understand what the timeline is in order to deliver a project that you're involved in. For example, currently I am involved in multiple projects which include server migration, merger and acquisition, as I mentioned before, and implementation of legislative changes that are coming, as well as redesigning of performance bonus. So if you'd like to learn more about project management and how closely it integrates with the day in the life of business analysts, then just keep on watching.
So now, shall we dive right into Project Management 101? So before we go into specifics of project management versus business analysis and what it is, at first I wanted to define what exactly is a project and what are some of the characteristics or challenges of these projects. So the definition of project of any project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result, according to PMBOK. So for those of you who are not familiar with PMBOK, it's project management body of knowledge book. So this is an actual published book which consists of entire collection of processes, best practices, and terminologies for project management. If you're interested in finding out more, then feel free to Google it and you'll find more information. So some of the characteristics of challenging projects include the following. So sometimes the start and completion time frame, they tend to shift. So they have to be temporary in order to be a project, but sometimes the start and end date, it's not clear. It has to be something that hasn't or was not done before. So it has to be something that wasn't done before. So it has to have a unique characteristic of being a project. It certainly involves risks and involves change management, involves progressive elaboration, which includes the scope, design, product specification, etc. So it has to be an iterative approach instead of just one-time build or one-time scope. It also involves limited resources, which include people, time, and money. And you have to have a specific customer with a need. And then therefore you need to have objectives and business requirements for this particular project. So let's talk about how business analysis fits into project management. Business analysis, it includes a set of activities or tasks or knowledge and technique required to determine solutions to business problems and identify business requirements. So business analysts by nature are trying to identify opportunities and to do needs analysis in order to come up with a list of solutions or potential solutions that's going to help the business to solve their problems. On the other hand, project management refers to application of a set of knowledge, skills, and tools and techniques to project-related activities in order to meet business needs. So they're more focused on doing the work and delivering it right, which includes stakeholder requirements and expectations, steering committees, and a lot of communication to adjust the customer expectations. So a lot of project management, it's supporting activities, and it's broader in scope for the overall success of the project. But business analysis tends to drill down right into the business problems and in order to find the opportunities and needs. So business analysis is very specific, involves a lot of drilling down and removing the layers of a lot of the uncertainties and assumptions, and to find out truly what exactly is the problem that we're trying to solve here. Whereas managers oftentimes need to make sure that we're on time, on budget, we are delivering things and hitting all the milestones. So that, to me, would be the biggest difference between business analyst and project manager. So oftentimes, even before launching a new project, there's a lot of pre-project activities that go into the feasibility study. So basically, the goal of feasibility is to identify opportunity and needs and to build a strong business case for budget approval, because as I mentioned before, some of the capital projects require tens of thousands, if not millions of dollars. So you definitely have to have a strong reasoning for initiating this project, right? And it also includes some ideas. The idea behind feasibility is that some ideas or initiatives may never become projects due to high opportunity costs and due to time constraint, or they might get pushed out to another year or another quarter because of the budget constraint. So the feasibility test really tries to determine, is this the right project that we can deliver at this time given our limited resources and timeline, or is it more feasible to delay it, or is it even feasible to implement this new change that we're trying to solve? So feasibility often needs to be performed by the project team and by the person who's initiating the project or the sponsor and his team of analysts or his team of business, right? So oftentimes business analysts have to work with the business stakeholders in order to provide more information so then they can build the strong business case. So let's talk about the project lifecycle. So there's 4 main stages, as you can see. So it starts from initiating, and it goes into planning, and then it flows into building, and then closing. So from beginning to end. So these are 4 very broad project life cycles. So there's a lot of steps in between and a lot of activities that happen underneath this bigger scope, but I just wanted to give you a big picture, bird's eye view of what kind of flow it goes from beginning to end. So oftentimes project lifecycle begins with initiating. So as I mentioned before, a lot of it has to do with proving concept and doing further analysis. And then some of the key deliverables at this stage include stakeholder register and then stakeholder matrix. And what this means is that we need to identify at the very beginning the roles and responsibilities of key stakeholders in order to make sure that everybody's clear on what's expected from them. So, for example, project manager could have a list of stakeholders and then their roles and responsibilities defined, and oftentimes this is called the stakeholder register, and then basically all the stakeholders have to have discussion and agree that yes, I understand what my roles and responsibilities for this project entail, and I've already talked to my supervisor and we are okay given the workload that I currently have. right? So without having all the stakeholders agree on what their roles and responsibilities are, oftentimes projects end up getting delayed because there's lack of communication or understanding of, oh, we were expecting something from you, and then the business coming back and saying, well, I didn't know that you guys needed something from me. I wasn't aware of this. So oftentimes, lack of communication and lack of clear roles and responsibilities lead to failure of a project. So this is why it's critical to kind of come together and understand what exactly everyone's supposed to be doing. The next stage includes planning. So this planning is actually one of the critical and most difficult phase, in my opinion, as a business analyst. So oftentimes this is where we do a deep dive into analysis. So initiating analysis was more high level, but planning analysis, it's more deeper level of analysis, and then it includes system design or just product design and procurement process as well. So if you have a request for a proposal for outside vendors to come and bid for your project, then this is what that procurement process would look like, and this is also part of your planning stage. So some of the key deliverables include, business case, building your business case, your stakeholder matrix sign off, and basically making sure that at the end of this stage, is this project still go or no go? So when somebody says go, no go, this is like the decision point where we're going to talk about, are we going to move on to the next stage or are we not there yet? Okay, same for the initiating phase. The next phase is the actual building or constructing phase. So this is where construction, building, developing, implementing, deployment, conversion, and training takes place. So this can take anywhere between 6 months to 2 years, depending on the nature of your project, or it can be longer. So if it's a really big construction job or project, then it could be a lot longer than 2 years. So what you have to remember is that the key deliverables here, it can include, if it's software implementation, UAT test script, some of the change requests, some of the decision requests, and training materials, and all those other lovely things that you need to basically input in order to make sure that you get the new design or the new build that you're looking for, whether or not it's a product or software or service or some kind of a new launch. You have to be clear in terms of the design and what you're expecting to get out of the project as a result. Again, here, this is one of the most critical review phase where you have to decide go or no go in order to make sure that you're moving on to the final stage. So last but not least, the closing phase of a project includes handover and evaluation. So some of the key deliverables here include the final end result. So whether it's a quantitative or qualitative result, you have to oftentimes review how the project went and determine whether it was a success or not as successful. So then you have to review all the things that you kind of want to improve for your next project, right? So oftentimes it includes surveys, users acceptance document, or project evaluation report. And this is where the final gate review happens, meaning that, this is the end of a full project lifecycle. And oftentimes there is a third-party auditor who actually does the full end-to-end project evaluation, and they have to produce that project evaluation report. So this is where we can actually get an unbiased view of a third-party auditor who can tell you whether or not this project was a success or a failure, because there's no conflict of interest. So post-project, as I mentioned before, post-project implementation, so everything goes back to business as usual. And as I mentioned before, business assessment report, third party with no conflict of interest. Oftentimes, those who are in charge of compliance would be the ones handling the business assessment report. So now let's move on and talk about project management methodologies. So there's different types of methodologies. It's a set of system of methods or principles and rules for regulating a given discipline. So there are, broadly speaking, 4 different methodologies that are most popular. The first one is waterfall, the second one is agile, and then the third type is actually called Agifall, which is a combination, it's a hybrid of the first two. And then the final stage is, the final approach would be the prototyping. So waterfall, it's been around for a really long time, and most of the ERP, enterprise resource planning softwares that I've worked with in the past have used waterfall methodology. So what you have to do is each phase has its own activities that you need to complete in order to go in a sequential manner. So in order to get to system design, you first have to do requirement specification, right? So after the requirement specification, you move on to the system design, and then from there you go into design implementation. So it's a step-by-step approach where you have to follow a certain rule in order to get from point A to B to C to D to E. Does it make sense? So the advantage is it's very detailed, and it's better for containing risk management because you're aware of the things that are happening, and if something's not working, then you can actually finish that phase before moving on to the next. The disadvantage would be the long timeline, right? It's going to take way longer to deliver than agile approach. So agile approach is the most popular approach that I'm aware of right now, especially in software industry. So agile approach is similar in terms of how business requirements are gathered and how analysis is done. So in that sense, they're kind of similar, but once the analysis is done, the key difference between Agile and Waterfall is the design and delivery phase. So once analysis is done, then each requirement is prioritized to high, medium, and low. So high would be critical, like we must have this in order to go live or in order to finish this project. The medium would be more important, but there's a workaround until we have this. There's a workaround in place until we implement this project. So some of the low items would be nice to have, but not critical for the operation of business. Once these business requirements are prioritized, then the releases are planned. So release can be planned in 2 different ways. One way would be Kanban, where you can visualize your work by using a physical board or a digital board to limit the number of items that you're working on at the moment. So by limiting your work in progress to maximize efficiency. And the second approach is called Scrum, where teams are dedicated to set intervals called sprints to quickly gather and integrate customer feedback. So it's very common in software industry, and then we also have. So each iteration is designed, built, tested, and moved to operations separately. So they're kind of like, instead of waiting for design phase to be completed, like in Waterfall, every iteration or every release is designed, built, tested, and then moved to customers in a quick turnaround manner. Key of Agile approach is that it focuses on MVP. So what is MVP? It's a minimum viable product. It is actually the key to Agile and Agifall methods. So Agile approach doesn't focus. Agile and Agifall methods don't focus on having everything perfect in the end. So Waterfall method is trying to focus and trying to get trying to gather as much information and as much requirements as possible to try produce the best product that they think the customer wants. However, in Agile and Agile methods, that's not the case. We want to produce the minimum, the bare minimum viable product that we need to create in order to be functioning, and then we're going to add, all the bells and whistles after we finish building this minimum viable product, because then we can start adding more functionalities and more configuration once we have the bare minimum product. In that way we can incorporate and we can ask customers, hey, do you guys want this feature or that feature? Like, is this working out for you? And then you can incorporate their feedback and then add it to the next sprint or next release, right? So that's sort of like the idea behind Agile and Agile, is that we are not necessarily trying to solve the customer's problems all at once. You're trying to prioritize what is the most important thing that you need to have, and then they're trying to solve them in a sprint. And with a waterfall, what ends up happening is that if customers are unhappy, or if customers are not satisfied with their end product, they've already spent a lot of time and resources and have already wasted a lot of resources by the end because they've already exhausted everything. So it tends to be a very difficult process in order to reprioritize and try to identify what the problems are. So Agile and Agile methods try to prevent this from happening by creating minimum viable product and adding all the other ones that are less critical, like medium and low prioritized requirements at a later stage. Okay, so the final methodology that we're going to talk about is called prototyping. So it basically simulates only a few aspects or the key features of the program. Oftentimes it's incomplete and it's just a model, and the end product may be completely different from the initial prototyping model. The advantage is that it actually increases user involvement, which allows them to see and interact with a prototype to get feedback earlier in the project to validate their opportunities or needs. The main disadvantage would be user could easily get caught up or confused of the prototype and actual end product, and they might actually get frustrated because this is not what exactly that they had in their mind. This isn't what they had envisioned. So they could get frustrated and they could get confused, and then they could have doubts, as to whether or not they're going to actually have the product that they actually want. And oftentimes pilot project is part of prototyping approach. So if you hear the term pilot project, then you know that your project management methodology includes prototyping as well. So that's it for today's video. I hope you found it useful, and let me know if you have any other questions in relation to project management and how business analysis can integrate. But I wanted to emphasize the importance of understanding project management terminologies and the project management lifecycle, because it's going to help you immensely as a business analyst once you get the hang of the procedures and the processes that involve projects. Because as I mentioned before, most of my day-to-day job involves attending project meeting calls and soliciting business requirements from the users, etc. So I would say 80% right now, because there are so many projects that I'm involved in. 80% of my job involves project management in one way or another. So let me know what you think, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.